The Shift, a college admissions ACT and SAT podcast for a changing world. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have an affordable ACT course that includes everything you need to ace your ACT. Book, tons of questions backed by our memory enhancing algorithm, videos on key topics, a built in study planner, and full length practice exams. You can get a free trial by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, use the code podcast to get 10% off. Now, let's get started. Today we've got Elton Lin back from Ilumin Education. And Elton, I'm really glad to have you here again. I'd love if you could introduce yourself for people who haven't heard your episodes before.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it. My name is Elton Lin. I'm the CEO and founder of Ilumin Education. We started the company in 2014 and have worked with thousands of students. We probably work with around about 300 to 350 students a year. Submit almost 2,000 apps a year. Read countless essays, and have had students admitted to every top 50 school, including every Ivy League, multiple times. We have people on our team who were former top university admissions office staff, including our president, who is a former University of California admissions officer. So we have a lot of visibility into the process, and but we're also excited just to help students take whatever the next step of whatever their next step is, whether it is top university or small liberal arts college in your home state. Regardless, we just want to see students take the next step of confidence and clarity. So excited to be here with you, Tyler, and I look forward to getting into it.
Yeah, me too. And so today we're going to be talking about kind of one of the most important things that's happened in the last really 30, 40 years, but also this year, which was the Supreme Court's ruling, or SCOTUS, which is short for Supreme Court of the United States, ruling on affirmative action, right? So this came down, I think, sort of in the second half of last year of 2023. And it was a monumental decision that, in practice, struck down a lot of what schools were doing to make admissions decisions based on sort of the race specifically of the student. And, I think probably other factors got lumped in there too, but like I think race was the big one that was changed. And so I'm curious, kind of now that we are in the admission cycle this year, 20 for I guess the class of 2028, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm curious sort of how this is affecting what people are doing or saying as your customers or just people are going through this process. And so what impact do you think it's going to have on the admissions landscape?
Yeah, I think the response is fairly mixed from the students and families that we're working with, and I think there's definitely concern from um, some of our students who are coming from more underrepresented backgrounds, and they're worried about what the results are going to be. And I think
Hmm.
that's definitely coming from the broader populace with regards to how will the admissions process change. I do feel like we work with, certainly, a good number of Asian students, and just for just there's no video here, but I'm Chinese American, and just to kind of throw that out
Hmm.
there, but work with a certain an array of Asian students who are concerned on both sides, and I think that concern is also
Hmm.
to where they feel perhaps some might feel empowered about race being taken out of the equation, and some worry that there's gonna be no consideration for them at all. Like it might backfire against them,
Hmm.
and them being a minority is going to be completely stricken from the review process. So I think there's concern overall. I don't know if there's really, and there's maybe some early stats for how this admissions class is turning out, but right now I think everybody's concerned and nobody knows what it's going to be for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I mean that was one of the things about affirmative action that was kind of an interesting point, and one that where I think a lot of people were arguing, um, that it was unfair, particularly to Asian Americans, right? Um, which was interesting. It's like, punished for your success or the success of your peer group on the one hand. And then, of course, on the other hand, the advocates of those underrepresented groups, obviously, there's a lot of value in those groups, and the people in them deserve to go to those same top colleges, even if their circumstances might not have set them up for, the perfect resume the way that, other groups have had, right? So it's a really, I mean, it's an interesting debate. And I think that, yeah, particularly if you're working with Asian students, I could see where they have mixed feelings about it. Um, and in terms of sort of how students are approaching the application process, one of the key pieces of the SCOTUS ruling was that Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, said essentially that like what is in your essay is obviously fair game. Like it's not blacklisting you from talking about your background or your upbringing in your essay because that would be ridiculous, right? Like it's your essay is about who you are and it's a key piece of the story. And so I am curious. I mean, one of the things when I read that immediately came to mind was I wonder if the new sort of thing that people are going to try to do is talk about their background in their essay more. Do you see that happening, or do you feel like that's something that people are considering?
So, what happened with the adjustments in the supplemental essays for top schools was that many top schools included in their supplement essay package a diversity essay prompt, which
Hmm.
really kind of opened it up to where whether it's we value a diverse class, please tell us about anything in your background, and they would in parentheses include like ethnic background, cultural heritage, race that might be important in wanting to help us, create a diverse class. And so, Johns Hopkins, I believe, changed the entire, adjusted their prompt to be targeted specifically in this direction, and most schools included something like that. So. We didn't need to, like, say, change the entire Common App main personal statement, but there was certainly an opportunity. And for our students who are coming from more underrepresented backgrounds, there's no question that we encourage them to think about stories from their background that might be a good signal.
Right. Well, and also, the colleges explicitly asking for that in their essays is a pretty good sign that they still want to know, right? Like it'd be one thing if they just said, okay, well, we'll just look for it in the general essay, and if we don't see it, we don't see it. But like instead, they're like, please tell us in so many words, like how let's say your background has affected your life or what have you.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you feel? I mean, you talked about sort of your clients in different groups. Like, how do you feel sort of they're taking it, right? Like, does it kind of seem like business as usual for them, or is it more like this is sort of a thing that a lot of people are putting a lot of effort into thinking about?
I don't think that I don't think it's dominating the narrative or the mind share with our families. I think there's some consideration. I think there's some hope that if you were, yeah, as mentioned, yeah, we work with a lot of Asian students. Hopefully that there might be more students who are just measured based on their merit, and whether that's grades and test scores or whatever, what have you, but just
Mhm.
given really a fair assessment or fair shake on the review. And I think there's some
Right.
hope, but I think there's a sense of like we just need to do the best that we can, and we're not going to overthink it. And
Yeah.
there was a study done that did compare even like Asian American admit rates to like say a broader American Caucasian admit rate, and there was some disparity with
Mhm.
regards to, if affirmative, I mean, if you know, like like race was not really considered, would you know, there should be some equality or equity in the admit rates, and there was still some differences
Mhm.
with regards to sort of Asian and and non-Asian admit rates, and so I think there's some, especially with the parents, I think there's some reality. They feel like the process is not entirely fair, and we're just going to do the best that we can,
Mhm.
and there's gonna let's just get the work done. So
Yeah, yeah, it makes a ton of sense. So then, kind of a couple of things we've talked about here have been related to the process. I guess my last question on sort of how it affects the application process is basically like for what's your advice for listeners, right? Kind of like regardless of what group they fall into. Maybe it's like advice for the general essay, or maybe it's advice for like the diversity question essay specifically. So what do you, yeah, what is kind of, what are you advising your clients even?
yeah, I think I mean, this is the case with everybody, but the reality is that you need to be the best version of yourself no matter what. So I mean,
Hmm.
no matter who you are, you can't, like a student who's really into computer science can make themselves, a philosophy expert, and somebody who's passionate about French poetry can't, all of a sudden be a physics expert. I mean, maybe in some contexts you could, but you just have to still be your best self. And with
Hmm.
regards to the diversity part, sometimes we challenge or encourage students to think about not, perhaps you're not coming from a more underrepresented audience, but how did you engage diversity in like your everyday life with your classmates, your activities? How are you bringing in a diverse mindset and perspective that might contribute to a
Right.
very rich culture? And so we're encouraging students to really think about, not just their heritage, but just their life. And I think there are more
Hmm.
things in a student's life that could give light to that perspective than they think. And so that's definitely what we're encouraging students to do.
Yeah, and I that is kind of a point that even like I experience myself, right? Like um I think that basically the point that you're making that I very much agree with is that there's a lot more types of diversity than just sort of the big ticket items of like either race or religion or things like that. Like there's also diversity around like socioeconomic status, around, like if you spent 2 years in Italy growing up, right? If you, had a unique experience because you were the child of like a military person and you moved around a lot. If in my case, like my younger brother was autistic, and so that was a very different experience than a lot of people had growing up. And that is diversity of thought and of experience and of sort of like the mental stuff more than like, for lack of a better word, the physical stuff, right? And I feel like that kind of regardless of your background, right? Like I'm the whitest white person, honestly. Like get called the whitest dancer at weddings, which hurts a little bit. But the
Too bad there's no video
the
for this.
yeah, for the whitest white dancing, yeah.
Uh,
But it's about sort of like what are the things that are giving you a unique perspective on life. And anyone can answer that question, right? Like, I don't think there's anyone on earth who's had a completely cookie cutter life. You know, everyone has their own sort of stories of things that they went through. It could be something like, your mother's battle with cancer, or it could be anything, right? So I think that's maybe the direction to take it. And, for people that are maybe not, when you look at that diversity question and you say, oh, well, I'm not diverse, so am I screwed or whatever? Like, I think that to try to broaden your definition of diversity in that context.
Yeah, yeah, no question. I think the "Am I screwed" probably comes into play for a lot of things. Whether you're getting a a C plus in a pre-calculus class or a host of other things, but yeah, I think I generally feel like it's there is some data to where, like, in the state of California, after the state of California banned affirmative action, the 1 or 2 years
Hmm.
after the ban resulted in like less diverse University of California campuses, and the UC made some adjustments, but my and I think made good adjustments in the process to really diversify
Hmm.
the UC student community. But my sense is that, like, colleges want a diverse class, and they will find a way to achieve that. And
Hmm.
I think broadly for students, like, thankfully this is the United States, and there are like there are amazing colleges up and down in every state, and there's gonna be good
Right.
options no matter what. And so I think this is where um, yeah, part of that feeling is because, in most people's mindsets, there's only four colleges in the United States. Whatever four colleges that might be in the, family narrative are the only four colleges. And so there are more schools, and there are some amazing schools, and students will have plenty of options. I don't worry about it one bit.
Yeah, exactly. And then my sort of last sort of direction to take this conversation is you mentioned that, one of the people on your staff used to be a UC admissions officer, or I think you even said the head. And I know that you just like in general, like as part of your company, you have a lot of admissions people, both that you work with and also that you talk to. What is sort of the admissions side of the table perspective on all of this?
Yeah, I think the communication has always been so for the UC. Because I mean, we're in California, we get a lot of visibility with the UC process. I think um, the overwhelming, the overwhelming narrative has always been, we're committed to diversity, and I think we've generally
Mhm.
across, when we work with students from every high school up and down the Bay Area, and it's been for the most part a fair shake for most high schools, regardless of whether what socioeconomic or sort of landscape that particular high school is in. What
Mhm.
economic demographic they represent, and students have really across from every high school have really been given a fair review. So I think that's part of what the UC has done, and that's what I sense that schools across the United States are going to be shifting to, which is looking at more household income, demographic type data to really help make sure diversity is still key. And I think I don't I as far as admissions officers, and I don't want to like pinpoint maybe exactly, like, but we have a couple of people that we also on our webinars kind of frequently connect with, and have been hearing across the board that yeah, they have their ways, whether it's like to increase outreach to particular high schools that they want to recruit from, whether it is yeah, reviewing specific demographic data. They're committed to making sure that their class is diverse, and they're not going to wait a couple years down the
Right.
road to see that data go down before they make adjustments. So hence all the prompt changes for the supplements. Hence I've seen yeah, my good friend who's an admissions director at Emory has been out here a ton of times, recruiting from different high schools. And so
Mhm.
my sense is that admissions offices are working hard to make sure that they hit the right students that they want.
Yeah, and I think that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that that's a really interesting shift. I've also heard from other people I've talked to, even like all the way across the country, like I think they're in New York, talking about the exact same thing, where the colleges are doing a lot more now in this last year to go out to schools, particularly the schools that are, not typically represented in their college, and like doing more recruitment trips and doing more like, interviews with potential applicants and things like that. That's really I guess, a silver lining to all of this is I think that that's generally a good direction. And hopefully we'll give people more opportunities to be visible in this process, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is where um, I think the schools, the colleges have their goals, and I think they're going to do everything in their power to achieve those goals. I still think especially for students coming from more underrepresented backgrounds and maybe high schools that have maybe demographics, like lower socioeconomic demographics, it still is, there's just
Hmm.
not enough advising. Like there's still not enough college counselors in schools giving enough time to each student. We as private counselors are trying to do as much pro bono work as we can as well, and we just
Hmm.
none of us can do enough, and so students still
Hmm.
need more advising, need more encouragement, need more clarity on how to take those next steps into getting their college degrees. And so it still needs to be very much a village mentality with how do we help like more students, regardless of their background, achieve their higher education goals.
Yeah. Great. Any other thoughts on this before we wrap up?
No, I don't know if I have any other any other insight. I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you so much. This has been Shift, a college admissions podcast for a changing world, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Elton Lin from Ilumin Education. And you can get a free trial of Achievable's ACT course by going to achievable.me and be sure to use the code podcast to get 10% off.